Diversify by using 2 to 5 superior money accumulation vehicles. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, how do you diversify using different index universal life insurance accounts? Get ready. You're going to understand some options here that maybe have never been explained to you before. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've helped many thousands of people save for long-term goals. That's any financial goal that's 5 years or further down the road. And that's usually goals like retirement, or maybe a saving for college for your children or grandchildren. Any goal that is going to be 5 years or longer down the road that you want to accumulate serious cash and not jeopardize it. Now, if you've watched any other episodes on this channel, or maybe you've read one of my books, I've been very honored and blessed, frankly, to have 12 best-selling books. One became a New York Times and Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller the second week it was released back in 2007. It was called Last Chance Millionaire. My very first book I self-published, and it got the attention of Time Warner. It was called Missed Fortune because of the fortunes people miss out on because they simply don't know what they don't know. So my purpose in these episodes is to enlighten you. To give you some ahas, epiphanies on opportunities that you never knew existed before. So in this particular episode, I'm going to show you how to diversify by using superior vehicles. Why? Because as a financial strategist, I've watched so many financial planners who say, well, you should not have all your eggs in one basket. You've heard that, right? And so they almost propose that you spread your money around into different baskets that are actually inferior. In other words, it would be like saying, put your eggs in a basket and let's add some rocks over in these baskets and so forth. You say, rocks? Well, yeah, because they'll break. In other words, they don't match up to inflation. You can't believe how many people think that diversifying means, oh, I should have this much money in a bank or credit union because it's diversified. And I'm going, so how much is the bank or credit union paying you? Well, less than 1%. Yeah. So you're rowing upstream at the rate of 1 mile an hour in the bank or credit union, and the current of inflation is coming down at 3, 4, 5, actually 8, 9, 10, or 11 at the true rate of inflation. You're going backwards fast. Well, but I'm supposed to diversify. A bank is safe, right? I go, well, yeah, banks are fairly safe because of FDIC, but do you know they could technically say no if you went to withdraw your money for up to 6 months if things got really bad? Why don't you put your money where your bank is putting your money? Where's that? Well, besides loaning it out to people, they take about 30% of their tier 1 assets. That's money they have to have liquid on hand and safe in case of a run on their bank, and they put it into the insurance industry. Why? Because the insurance industry, legal reserve insurance companies, are usually rated 5 or 6 notches higher in safety, AAA, compared to many banks are only rated BBB. That's 6 notches higher in safety. They would increase their safety and the rate of return by 5 times. They pay you 1% and they turn around, you put $1 million in a bank or credit union, they pay you $10,000. They'll put that million and put it into an insurance company and earn 5% or $50,000. How much more is $50,000 than $10,000? It's not 4% higher interest, it's 5 times. Would you hire an employee for 10 grand that made you an extra 50 grand? Would you buy a widget machine for 10,000 that made you an extra 50,000? So just bypass the middleman and put your money directly into the place where banks put their money for liquidity and safety. So when people begin to understand that, they realize that a maximum funded indexed universal life insurance policy is the only vehicle in the Internal Revenue Code that allows you to accumulate your money tax-free, access your money tax-free all through retirement, and if you do it smart without depleting principal, and when you ultimately die, whatever's left behind blossoms and transfers tax-free to your spouse, your kids, your grandkids. Nothing else does that. But the average return that I've achieved has been between 7.23 and 10.07. Many years I've earned way more than that. But there's a lot of advisors who put your money in mutual funds and they go, I've never seen an insurance policy do that. That's because unfortunately, most universal life policies, most whole life policies are not designed for living benefits. When you have it structured properly and funded correctly, it qualifies to be a laser fund. Liquid assets safely earning returns spells that acronym LASER. So the next question people ask me is, well, how do I diversify inside of a portfolio of laser funds? I agree. Those are superior vehicles. Well, you can diversify in all kinds of ways. Here we go. So before I go any further, I'm not going to spend any time talking about what indexing is. If you're not sure, be sure and subscribe to this channel and share this video. Look at the other ones that I have that talk about indexing. I'm going to assume you sort of understand what indexing is, because I'm going to now talk about how to diversify with your universal life policy using different indexing strategies. Now, how do you diversify? You want to diversify with superior vehicles, not with inferior vehicles that pay very low rates of return, that are not liquid. And a lot of times people don't understand, when you diversify, you want to diversify among superior vehicles. In a nutshell, I have many universal life policies on me. I have some on my wife. I have some on my kids, and now my grandkids. I have some with this company, this company, this company, this company, this company. So I diversify like that. But with a specific company or one or two companies, they offer all kinds of indices, okay, that I can link to. The S&P 500, maybe the NASDAQ, the Russell 2000, the Dow Jones. But the linking strategies and the participation rates also allow me to diversify. So let's start out simple here at first. For years, I had clients who would diversify, and maybe they would go into one that had a 100% participation rate with a 13% cap. This was back 1997 to about 2012, about a 15-year period. The average return over the 30-year historical was 8.11. And then some, they would take a 2% guarantee, but the cap would come down, and that was 7.73. They might put 20% of their money. Let's say they have $1 million in their policy, and they put 20% in each one of these. Here's a 0% floor. In other words, zero is your hero. This one averaged 7.42. The cap was 11.2 at the time, but they pay you 140% participation rate. Here's a 0% floor, 16% cap. That's 8.85. Another one, no cap, and the participation rate was only 65% back then on that one. So you can average, but you just sort of average those, and there you go. You have between like a 7.5 to 8.5, even 9% average rate of return. So sometimes people diversify, and those are different companies with different types of indexing strategies. Now, a lot of times people will use the same company, and this is their annual statement. Now, you can't see this. I'm going to read it to you, but I'm holding it up because this is for real. Sometimes we have critics that say, I've never seen an example of an actual client who had these rates of return. Well, here's the actual annual statement of this client. So let me show you what the rates of return were. These were all of the indices. I think there's like 15 that they could have chose with that particular company. And this particular person had $76,749, was exactly 20% of how much money they had in their universal life policy at the beginning of the year. And so they allocated $76,000 into one strategy, another $76,000. They had 5 times that much in their policy is what I mean. And so over here, I've indicated they diversified 20% into the Barclays U.S. Dynamic Balance Index. And that year, they earned 13.65%, okay? $12,323. They had another 20%, in other words, $76,000 in the S&P 500. And that was 11%, so they got $9,933. They had another 20% in the NASDAQ. Okay, 100 index performs annual point to point. They got 9.5%. They received $8,500 and some odd dollars. They had another 20% of their money in what is called the blended index. And that year they got 15%. That was $13,546. The last 20%, the last $76,000, was just in the company earning the general account portfolio rate of 4.4% that year. So you add all of those up and they average 10.71%. That year, tax-free rate of return by having 20% of their money in each of 5 different places, 4 in index accounts and 1 just sitting in the insurance company, earning the general account portfolio rate of 4.4%. That's diversifying smart with one company, 5 different baskets. Does that make sense? In this very channel, I have talked about different strategies like 1 year point to point, maybe 1 year point to point with no cap, and there's a threshold or spread, or maybe the 2 year point to point or the 5 year point to point last year average. So let's say you allocated 40% in the 1 year high cap index with an 11% cap, 40% in a 2 year index account with a 19% cap, and 20% in the 5 year index account with no cap. My sons, who are IUL professionals, they have diversified many of their clients like this, 40-40-20. Do you know that the average crediting rate has been 11.35% over 20-year periods by using that allocation? You can go to sleep like Rip Van Winkle and wake up 20 years later and you go, well, what return did I get? And people go, oh man, the market's been topsy-turvy the last 20 years. Man, we've had the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the 2008 mortgage meltdown and the COVID pandemic, and the market's just been crazy. Some people are just glad to get their money back, and you're looking, you've been averaging 11.3% because you did this 20 years ago and fell asleep. And you woke up and 11% a year, 11 into the number 72, your money is going to double about every 6 to 7 years. Not bad. Here is one other. I've used this on another episode. If you had allocated 50% in the 2 year indexed account with a 19% cap and 50% in the 5 year index account with no cap, the average crediting rate over the long term with this, based on actual history, would have been 14% average crediting rate. Now, we can't predict that for the future, but that's the advantage of diversifying in superior vehicles rather than thinking that allocating some of your money in a bank or credit union earning 1%, it satisfies diversification. The money's more liquid and more safe in the insurance company. If push comes to shove, you can access it easier, faster with an electronic funds transfer or phone call out of an IUL than you can from a bank or credit union, even if they have a drive-up window, because they could tell you sorry for 6 months if things got really bad. A lot of people don't know that. So folks, if this is intriguing you, you ought to learn more. The best way I would recommend is to read. If you like to read and learn, if you like to listen and learn or watch and learn, I have all kinds of educational videos. I have audiobooks. But I want to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book, The Laser Fund. It talks about indexing in all kinds of detail. And when you structure it correctly, the advantages on a maximum funded indexed universal life is you can link your returns to the market, but if the market crashes, you don't lose. Zero is your hero. But you can participate, sometimes more than 100% when the market goes up. So you have upside potential, but you are protected on the downside if the market crashes. This is what allows you to earn predictable rates of return, and you diversify among various indexing strategies or companies, okay, or some on you, some on your spouse. That's how you diversify in order to have a superior average rate of return rather than thinking, well, I'm going to put my eggs in a few baskets over here in a bank or credit union. I don't think that's smart when you really understand liquidity, safety, and earning predictable rates of return tax-free. The bank is not going to pay you tax-free rates of return unless you bought a municipal bond from them, and they do not pay that much interest. If you'd like to claim your free copy, go to laserfund.com, click on the link below, contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll fire out a copy to you, and you can listen and learn, watch and learn, and there's also opportunities to be notified when we teach educational webinars. We do it all the time because my purpose is to empower you to take ownership of your brighter future.